we're on. Hello, Dan. Welcome
Hey
back.
Steve, how are you?
Welcome back to the podcast, Dan. Like I said, we tried this before and we had some problems before, but we should be okay now. So let's get this interview underway. So first,
I'm ready.
let's introduce Dan here. Dan is from Vessel of Light. Dan is the lead guitarist for Vessel of Light. You want to tell us a little bit about Vessel of Light, Dan, real quick?
Well, we just released our third album called Vessel of Light, Thy Serpent Rise. Nathan Opposition is the singer. I play guitar, and the first two albums we released them on our own, just Nathan and myself, through Argonato Records in Italy. We had an EP, and then we released Woodshed, and now Jimmy Shulman, the former Hades bass player, joined for Thy Serpent Rise, as did Ron Lipnicki from Overkill.
Very cool. So it's a pretty all-star cast there. You know, a lot of local is coming from a lot of local bands. You know, people who know from New Jersey. Very cool. So, all right. So let's begin the questions. So to start, what were your first musical influences?
I grew up listening to Kiss and old Aerosmith. This is like in 1976, 77. And I started playing guitar in 1978. And then I discovered AC/DC. Later on down the road was Judas Priest and Slayer.
All right, it's a good solid start. I think that's what starts a lot of people. No Van Halen in there at all. Just quickly asking.
No, that wasn't for me, man. Not at all.
Really? Okay, interesting. Okay, I think my generation
Yeah.
kind of came out. Yeah, that was my first thing was Van Halen. But okay, very cool. That's a good start. Absolutely.
I wasn't
Um,
into the overall, but I was into the smiling.
yeah, I know. I hear you definitely. Um,
There's a few, I mean, there's definitely a handful of Van Halen songs I really love, but definitely it's not something I would need to ever throw on or hear again.
right, they were a little too like too happy for you. You know, like you were definitely into more like darker stuff.
Yeah.
You started with. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Um, so your musical career goes back to the 1980s with Hades and nonfiction. What was this scene like in the early days as opposed to today's musical scene?
Well, in 1982 and 83, actually even before that, 81 through 83, I think, Hades, we could make pretty good money playing covers. We do three sets of like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, some Sabbath, some Saxon, whatever we liked. And that was with the original singer, Paul Smith. So back then, the drinking age was 18. So you really could, like, you could go to the Soap Factory on a Tuesday night to see a cover band, and there'd be hundreds of people there. It was really a great scene.
Where was the soap factory?
That was in, oh boy, now, Palisades Park. My wife yelled down from below.
Wow,
Yeah.
before my time. Soap factory. Wow, I remember a lot of the clubs, but I don't remember that one. Wow, that is
That
definitely
was a
before my
great one.
time.
Yeah, we opened up for Twisted Sister there when they were primarily covers. They had just released
Yeah,
a
I,
debut EP.
I saw a documentary on them. I didn't believe they started as like a sort of like a Judas Priest cover band back in the 70s. Like
Well, I remember them doing a Sabbath medley with Dee Snider sang the hell out of Lady Evil and Heaven
wow,
and Hell kind
doing
of
like
stuff. Yeah,
doing Dio stuff. I love Dio Black Sabbath. It's awesome.
yeah. Dee's voice was tremendous back in the
Absolutely,
day.
I love it.
Really,
There's nothing wrong with it. I like Ian Gillan Black Sabbath too. That one album.
it's cool.
It's a good album. So anyway, in your lengthy music career, what were your biggest achievements?
I think just continuing on in the year 2020. I mean, I put out a bunch of records with Hades and nonfiction. I did The Curse with Bobby Blitz, but just the fact that I'm still doing it, still writing heavy music, whereas the bands I grew up on, like Aerosmith and Kiss, in my opinion, they're totally cheesy now.
Yeah,
They can't write great songs anymore. They have people help them write songs. Their goal is to write a hit song where that's really never been my goal. So I think my proudest accomplishment is that I'm playing music that I truly love. I'm not trying to appeal to a bigger market or to something that's not me. I don't want to play songs I don't love personally.
makes sense. What do you think about Aerosmith? Like doing a residency in Vegas. What do you think about that? Like one of your favorite bands ever? Just
Well, my
sort of.
bass player Jimmy Shulman, he actually wanted us to go, but I mean, if they're playing songs like "Love in the Elevator"
Yeah,
or
yeah.
"Falling in Love is Harder Than These," I have no interest in that. I mean, they
I hear
still
you.
play some great songs. I still love Aerosmith. This is what they used to represent to me. Like Joe Perry was my image idol back in the late '70s. So I'll always respect them. I love Steven Tyler. I love Joe Perry. I love the whole band. I just don't like the song list that they're trying to appeal to soccer moms or whatever. So
Yes.
it's just not for me. I wouldn't spend whatever it is on a ticket to go see them play hit songs. It's just I'm not interested in that.
I hear you. If they're gonna play stuff from like the '90s and all that, like MTV stuff
Yeah.
from the '90s, yeah, I hear you totally. Um, so were you ever involved with other New Jersey stoner acts such as Monster Magnet or Atomic Bitch Wax?
No, because I live up in 201. They were a different scene. I was always straight. I know Monster Magnet was always not straight. And we really never crossed paths ever, which is
Hmm.
kind of remarkable.
Right. I think you guys are
Did
friends now.
little mini tours with Phil when he was in the band Blitz. Nonfiction played some shows with them down south. And he was a great guy. And I remember those shows were a lot of fun, but I've never been in the same room with anybody from Monster Magnet, I don't believe, or when they were playing. So I never met them or the other band you mentioned.
Oh, very interesting. Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned Bobby Blitz before. How did you get involved with Bobby? And have you you seem to have a lot of connections with him. So like, yeah, how did you like start getting involved with Bobby being in this scene?
Hades used to open up for Overkill back in the day, and I don't really remember talking with them. Jimmy Schulman was actually the guy who Field Fire. Blitz didn't know this until about 15 years ago. Jimmy Schulman put out Blitz's hair when it was on fire back in the day at Lemoore. But Blitz and Dee Dee really loved the band Nonfiction. So when we were looking to do a tour, I remember Dee Dee Verney telling us every time he turns on WSOU back in like 1992, he'd hear Nonfiction, and he really loved it. So we toured America with Overkill for 3 weeks, and then we took a couple days off, and then we went to Europe for 3 weeks. And Blitz and I and Dee Dee, we kind of bonded over the New York Knicks in the playoffs. I would have IRS records fax me the Daily News because back
Ah,
then there was no smartphone, so they would fax me the Daily News sports pages about the Knicks, and I would share it with Blitz and Dee Dee. And we stayed friendly, particularly Blitz and I. And Blitz loved my first solo album, which I released in 2003. And then he sang one song on my second solo album. And then in 2006, we started having rehearsals and writing together. And in 2007, we released the Curse CD, Room Full of Sinners, which was Blitz's first album outside of Overkill to that point.
oh, very good. I have like vivid memories of WSOU in the early '90s, and growing up, I discovered metal, and I remember them playing Nonfiction. I remember them playing a lot of Overkill, and I remember them playing a lot of Manowar. That's what I remember. And I'll
Well,
and
back then was the only time I didn't have a full time job, or even a job, was from like 1991 to 94. Thanks to WSOU, nonfiction was getting so much airplay, and I was not even middle income. I was low income, but I would play like a show at the end of the month to pay my rent locally because WSOU was so good to nonfiction back in the day.
yeah, I remember those days. I remember them. I was like 13, but I remember them clearly.
Yeah.
Um, so, what do you see for the future of Vessel of Light?
Well, we're playing some shows in March. Nathan's flying back out of here. Nathan Opposition lives in Cleveland. He's in a band called Ancient Wisdom, and he's flying out here March 5th. And then we're going to have our first ever rehearsal with the four of us together. And then we're going to be playing the Brighton Bar, Blackthorn 51, and Olives up in Nyack on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of March. And then we're playing the Maryland Dune Festival in June. We'll surround that with some shows, and then we'll start working on our fourth record.
Very cool. Very cool. And one last question. In the past 10 years, the Doom Stoner genre seems to have gained a lot of popular momentum. Um, where do you see this genre going in the next 10 years, being that you guys are kind of involved in that?
I have no idea, Steve. I mean, I can't predict the future. I'm really not good at that. But I think the last time you asked me what bands that I like from the scene, I really couldn't think of any. And then I remembered at the end of it that I do love the band Clutch, and I
Clutch.
think they definitely probably keep that kind of scene alive. And I
Yeah.
have tremendous respect for Clutch, not just their riffs, but their work ethic, their independent structure, the way they do it without a real record label. I think they're so badass.
Yeah, they do it
Um,
on their own. I hear a lot of Clutch in your music. I hear a lot of influence of Clutch in your music. They
well, I
kind of
think,
have that
like I
classic
said,
sound.
we all grew up on, like got influenced by Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, who neither of which I was really into much until after high school. But we're probably influenced by the same things. I can't say my music was influenced by Clutch because I was doing this, before when Clutch was a hardcore band, back in the early
Yeah, early
90s.
'90s. Yeah.
But I do have tremendous respect.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's a pretty, Clutch is definitely a very important member, especially like in specifically stoner music. I think Clutch is really like the biggest name. Yeah, I've seen.
Definitely.
Have you ever met them, or have you ever actually gotten your run-ins with Clutch, or?
Yeah, I've interviewed Neil a couple times, and I met him a couple times. And Ron Lipnicki actually drove them. He was working for a company called the SST. He got to drive them to their show at the Irving Plaza last year. I remember,
Ah,
and just we were friendly with the guy who used to work their radio, John Nardachone, who was actually the bass player for the Cursed. But I haven't seen Clutch in years, but my wife and I still listen to them. Definitely a great band.
yeah, they play. They play like clockwork every year on December 28th at Starland every
Yeah,
year. So you have it's like a tradition kind of, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
very cool. Yeah, they're very seem to be very down to earth band. It's regular guys. So
definitely.
which is kind of cool. So all right, Dan, that's all the questions
All right,
we
Steve.
have.
Thanks, man.
No problem. So that's once again this is Dan Lorenzo from Vessel of Light, and make sure to check out their new album. What you have the album there or?
Oh, I don't have it
Oh,
tonight with me.
sorry.
Not, no.
I just want you to
It's
hang up.
called Thy Serpent Rise, but it's available on iTunes and Amazon. And just got a really, really killer review on Blabbermouth. So check that out.
Very cool. So make sure y'all check that out. Check it out on Spotify or buy the album. Make sure you listen to it. Support your local bands. All right. Thanks again, Dan. And we're
Have a
gonna
great night, mate.
you too,
Bye
dude.
bye.
Take care. Bye.